Drew McIntyre walked into SmackDown as the most dangerous man in the building, and by the end of the night, he walked out with even more enemies lining up to take his crown. The show barely had time to breathe before Drew McIntyre's presence was felt. The undisputed WWE champion wasn't just carrying gold on his shoulder, he was carrying an attitude that screamed dominance, control, and complete disregard for anyone standing in his way. Since winning the title, Drew has made it clear this isn't a heroic reign. This is a reign built on intimidation, fear, and unfinished business. Backstage, the atmosphere was tense. Cameras cut through the hallway, and there stood Sami Zayn, calm, focused, and quietly intense. Sami wasn't smiling, he wasn't joking, he looked like a man who had made a decision. And then Drew McIntyre stepped into frame. The air changed instantly. Drew didn't rush, he didn't yell. He slowly approached Sami, championship resting on his shoulder like a reminder of exactly who he was dealing with. Drew's eyes never left Sami's face. No music, no crowd reaction, just raw tension. Drew spoke first. He reminded Sami who he was standing in front of. The champion, the man who ended Cody Rhodes' dream. The man who has survived wars, betrayals, and setbacks, and come out colder every time. Drew mocked Sami's road to the Royal Rumble, dismissing it as another hopeful fairy tale that would end the same way all of Sami's big moments end. Short, painful, and unsuccessful, Sami didn't back down. That's what made this moment different. Sami told Drew that he's been underestimated his entire career. That every single time people say he can't do it, he gets closer. Closer to the title, closer to proving everyone wrong. And if Drew thinks this reign is untouchable, then he hasn't been paying attention. Sami looked straight at the championship and said it plainly. One day, that title will be his. Drew laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an angry one, a confident, cutting laugh. Drew reminded Sami of one brutal truth: Sami has never beaten him. Not when it mattered, not when the pressure was on. Drew told Sami that dreams don't win championships. Power does, violence does, and Drew McIntyre has both. The two men stood inches apart. No punches thrown, no officials running in, just a silent stare down that said everything. Sami ended the exchange with two words that echoed louder than any punch. "We'll see," and he walked away. That moment alone would have been enough to shake the foundation of SmackDown. But Drew McIntyre wasn't done making enemies. Earlier in the night, chaos erupted when Jacob Fatu exploded onto the scene, attacking Drew with pure fury. No warning, no hesitation, just destruction. The champion was forced to retreat, scrambling through the crowd, something Drew McIntyre rarely does. It wasn't just an attack. It was a statement. Jacob Fatu isn't impressed, he isn't intimidated, and he's coming for the throne. Then there's Randy Orton. The Viper didn't strike, not yet, but his presence was felt. A look, a line, a reminder that history between Orton and McIntyre is soaked in violence. Orton doesn't forget, and he never forgives. By the time the night went on, it became clear. Drew McIntyre isn't just the champion. He's the target. Every promo, every confrontation, every stare down is building towards something bigger. Drew has positioned himself as the final boss of SmackDown, but being on top means everyone is looking up, waiting for the moment to pull you down. And Sami Zayn, Sami didn't attack Drew. He didn't embarrass him. He did something far more dangerous. He planted doubt. Sami reminded the world that heart, timing, and belief can crack even the strongest armor. Drew might be bigger, stronger, more ruthless, but Sami has survived impossible odds before. And the Royal Rumble is the perfect battlefield for a miracle. As SmackDown faded to black, one truth was undeniable. Drew McIntyre is surrounded. Jacob Fatu wants to destroy him. Randy Orton is lurking in the shadows. And Sami Zayn just put himself on a collision course with destiny. The champion may be standing tall now, but the walls are closing in. And on SmackDown, the hunt for Drew McIntyre has officially begun. The next week on SmackDown, the tension didn't fade, it multiplied. Drew McIntyre opened the show standing in the ring, championship held high, but his expression told a different story. This wasn't celebration, this was confrontation waiting to happen. Drew said the locker room had suddenly found its courage because he was champion. He called it pathetic. He said everyone wanted a shot, but nobody wanted the consequences. Then he brought up Sami Zayn. Drew said Sami's words echoed in his head longer than they should have, not because they scared him, but because they annoyed him. Drew said hope is dangerous in WWE. Hope gets people hurt, and if Sami keeps chasing something he can't have, Drew promised to be the one to end that hope personally. That's when Sami Zayn's music hit. No hesitation, no theatrics. Sami walked straight to the ring, eyes locked on Drew. The crowd erupted, sensing that this wasn't just another promo exchange, this was a turning point. Sami told Drew he didn't come out to talk anymore. He came out because Drew keeps pretending this is about history and stats, when it's really about fear. Sami said Drew knows something has changed. The locker room doesn't see an unstoppable monster anymore. They see a champion fighting on too many fronts at once. Sami said Drew isn't surrounded by challengers. He's surrounded by consequences. Drew stepped forward, forehead nearly touching Sami's. He told Sami if he wanted to test that theory, he could do it right now. The tension was unbearable, and then, chaos. Jacob Fatu stormed through the crowd again. No warning, no music, just impact. Fatu slid into the ring and immediately went after Drew. Fists flying. The champion was rocked. Sami stood frozen for half a second, caught between instinct and opportunity. Then Drew swung wildly, catching Fatu just long enough to escape the ring. But the damage was done. Drew backed up the ramp, staring into the ring at two men he never expected to share space, Sami Zayn and Jacob Fatu, both standing tall, both watching him retreat. For the first time since winning the title, Drew McIntyre looked rattled. Backstage later that night, cameras caught Drew pacing. He said this was exactly what he warned about. People smelling blood, people thinking he's vulnerable. Drew promised that the next person who stepped up wouldn't walk away. Moments later, Sami Zayn was interviewed. Sami said Drew keeps talking about power, but power doesn't scare him anymore. Control does. And Drew is losing control piece by piece. Sami said he doesn't need shortcuts. He doesn't need ambushes. He doesn't need to hide. All he needs is one match. And he wants Drew McIntyre. The final shot of the night showed Drew McIntyre alone in the locker room, championship sitting beside him instead of on his shoulder. He stared at it, jaw clenched, eyes burning. Enemies on every side, pressure closing in, and doubt creeping where confidence once lived. Drew McIntyre may be champion. But on Smackdown, the countdown has started. And this reign is heading straight toward a collision it might not survive.